Happy, beautiful day. It's Pete Cohen. It is the MI365 Podcast. Today's podcast is an interview with an awesome human being, Jose Pereira, who has the most incredible story to tell. We want to highlight people who are intentional. We want to highlight people that are doing great work. We want to highlight people that have been through difficulty in their life and yet have chosen on the back of what they've been through to do the greatest work of their life, to help and to serve others. Jose's story is pretty phenomenal in terms of what happened to him. But hey, I don't want to spoil that for you. I want you to enjoy the interview. There were a few technical issues with the interview, but you know what? I'm sure you're going to hear a great story. It will inspire you. And I'll see you with Jose after the theme tune.
Listen, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. We met on LinkedIn a few weeks ago and on an audio space in there, and I heard you tell a little bit of your story, and I thought, wow, this is something that I would love to share with the world, because you don't hear stories like this every single day. But for those of us that don't know who Jose is, he is an adversity and resilience coach. He's in Houston, Texas. Tell us a little bit about where should we start? Where would you like to start with your story?
Well, let me tell you, it's a good start today because 2 days ago I had my first anniversary that I came back from being 5 years international hostage. For the audience that doesn't know my case, let me begin.
It's Pete Cohen. It is the MI365 Podcast. Today's podcast is an interview with an awesome human being, Jose Pereira, who has the most incredible story to tell. We want to highlight people who are intentional. We want to highlight people that are doing great work. We want to highlight people that have been through difficulty in their life and yet have chosen on the back of what they've been through to do the greatest work of their life, to help and to serve others. Jose's story is pretty phenomenal in terms of what happened to him. But hey, I don't want to spoil that for you. I want you to enjoy the interview. There were a few technical issues with the interview, but you know what? I'm sure you're going to hear a great story. It will inspire you. And I'll see you with Jose after the theme tune.
Listen, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. We met on LinkedIn a few weeks ago and on an audio space in there, and I heard you tell a little bit of your story, and I thought, wow, this is something that I would love to share with the world, because you don't hear stories like this every single day. But for those of us that don't know who Jose is, he is an adversity and resilience coach. He's in Houston, Texas. Tell us a little bit about where should we start? Where would you like to start with your story?
Well, let me tell you, it's a good start today because 2 days ago I had my first anniversary that I came back from being 5 years international hostage. For the audience that doesn't know my case, let me begin from the beginning. I'm a former oil and gas executive. I worked 45 years in the oil and gas. I began my career in Venezuela because I'm Venezuelan born, dual citizen. I began my career in Venezuela back in the 80s, when Venezuela was a wealthy country, and the oil industry of Venezuela was the fifth industry of the world. And at that time, that was PDVSA, the national oil company. I began my career there in 1985. So I did a wonderful career there. I developed my career, and at some point, I was transferred to here to the U.S. affiliated, that is Citgo. Citgo Petroleum is part of the family of PDVSA, but it's here located in Houston. It's an American company with 6,000 gas stations. So everybody here in the U.S. knows Citgo because it's all over the U.S., the gas station. The logo of Citgo is all over. And by the way, here in the stadium of Houston, the Minute Maid, that logo was since years. Even in Boston, in the Boston Stadium, there is the signs there. So there's a lot of visibility of the companies. I was working in that company and I did my career there. And at the end of the time, I began in 2017 to be the CEO of that company. At the end of my career, I was ready to get retired, because even that I was 55 at that point, I had already 35 years in the oil and gas. I said, okay, I'm done. They were having issues. In that moment, they're having issues with Venezuela because if there is a regime there, they have more than 2 decades and things begin to go bad. And the US government begin to impose sanctions in Venezuela. But to tell you the truth, I never thought that could affect me because I was a oil and gas guy. I was not a politician. We were called to a last minute in November 2017, and it was supposed to be a 1 day trip, go make a presentation and come back, like I did frequently. And that became to be a settlement that we stayed 5 years there because the situation, we became to be the political pawns in the bargain chips of the relation between the US and Venezuela. Big, big deal. So that is,
Wow.
yeah.
I mean, look, obviously there's so much in that story. And for those of us that don't know too much, I mean, I know a little bit about Venezuela. And for the last, 10 years, there's been a horrible situation there. I know many Venezuelans have
The 10 year has been
left. 20 years.
Yeah.
Many have left and gone to Colombia. They've got out, right?
Here in the US, they're coming. I can tell you, Pete, it's really a pity. I'm as Venezuelan born, really hard my breaks my heart that we were not immigrants, never, because Venezuela was a wealthy country. But since all this regime came there, the problem is everybody's is a big diaspora. It's more than 7 million people they have left. And yeah, maybe 2 million to Colombia, maybe 1.5 here to the US, and the rest is all over the world. All over the
It's one of those situations that here in the United Kingdom, we don't know too much about the situation. It's not reported to us. But myself being interested in the world and what's going on, I hear, it's terrible, the situation. But you obviously built a career, and you must have, from what you said, you must have felt like you were a little bit above what was going on. Like I'm not in this. I'm not affected by this.
I never to tell, because this is a question that always I got. Why you came here? Because I never had no problem. Let me tell you, but that moment we were revamping a refinery in Aruba. In the Aruba, the island in the Caribbean, we were having a refinery there that we were refurbishing. And the presentation that I was going to do was exactly the status of that. And I was doing that in a very frequent basis. So I didn't see no problem because I always was traveling back and forward, but it was 1 day travel. I always, because I knew that the country was really not safe to that moment. So literally I did that. I landed, went to the business trip, and came back, and in the night I was here in my house. So I never stayed there. So
you were looking forward to retirement, right?
Yeah,
retirement was around the corner.
Yes,
you probably had an idea of what your retirement would look like.
Well, let me.
You were going.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
Let me tell you how it was. November 2017, as I said, I already had 35 years, and I came to talk to Venezuela one month before this happened. I came to Venezuela because my boss was a high guy of PDVSA, and to convince him to get me retired. I was a CEO. I said, "Hey, guy, I'm done. I'm done. I want to go. I wanted to become a consultant." So back and forward, he approved my retirement for February. 3 months to get retired. So my plan that day, that's one of the things today I talk to the people, you always are making plans, but you never know. So
yeah,
my plan was go to the trip, come back, take 1 month vacation, take it fine, come back December, and in February, I was done with my life. I had a wonderful life. That never happened.
So you arrived in Venezuela thinking that you were going to be in and out in a day, and you ended up with a 5-year captivity. Tell us a little bit about, if you don't mind, that day and what happened.
Oh wow, that was one of the terrible days in my life, and I have been reminded it because I said I had 2 days ago I had 1 year that I came back, and so the memory begins to give you crazy things. And I was thinking in that day because as I said, the meeting was done. The funny thing is the meeting that I went, I did the meeting, It was a very big ballroom, maybe 1,000 person there. I made my presentation, done. I was gonna to get out, and suddenly I sit down to to say goodbye to the people, and then I see coming like 20 guys with I call them like Robocop outfits, because one of the things that today is happening in Venezuela, unfortunately, is part of that is something that is called the hostage diplomacy. So I was not aware. Now this is one of my things today. So let me educate the audience about that. So what was going on? Because this country, they have, they are part of like a evil thing where there are several other countries like Iran, China, Russia, Syria, all this club. And what they do, they reply their techniques. So what did the Venezuelans? I didn't know. I was not aware, by the way. They replied the Iranian counterintelligence force in Iran is called the IRGC. In Venezuela, they called it DJC, but they're exactly the same. This is like a Praetorian guard with, if you see, they're scary. They use masks. So when I saw this guy coming and asking for me, my first reaction was that that was a mistake, that something was going wrong. Well, let me tell you, that day began a nightmare. It was really a nightmare. We, from that day until the next 10 months, I was totally disappeared. We were put in a place called that submarine, like 3 stories basement down. There was totally isolated. There was no window, no nothing, no running water. It was terrible, terrible, terrible. And we lost the sense of time. And we didn't know what was going on. Absolutely nothing. One of the guys that was with me, he found in the floor a small needle. So this guy began to put with a needle to begin to count the days. That's why we recovered the sense of time. Well, long story short, is we say 10 months there. After 10 months, they give me a 1 minute call. When I received that minute call, I could talk with my wife. And my wife said, "How are you?" I said, I'm alive. And she said, "We're working hard to bring you back." So at that moment is that I learned that she was fighting. Today, I can tell her because I'm here. What they were doing, we were 6 guys. I was the CEO, and I had my 5 top executives, VPs, all my VPs. So we were 6 guys in that place, and that's why the people maybe are not aware, but if you Google it, you will find tons of news about us, because the press put us a name that is a brand. It was called the Citgo 6. We became to be the Citgo 6. Citgo because the company is 6 because we were 6. So the press was, for some reason, they put us that name. That name really became a brand. It became a brand.
And then were the 6 of you together the whole time?
No, at the beginning, in those 10 months, no. I was only with one guy. The other were four apart. By the way, I saw them 1 year after. We were new. This is something that is difficult to explain, because
Yeah, yeah.
you lose your sense of time. You lose the sense of everything. I didn't knew this where these guys were until 1 year that I saw them.
So when you were in that situation, what was your intention? What was your focus?
This is something that it was evolving, because during those 10
Yeah.
months, really, in your mind goes terrible thought. Even at some point, you think about taking your life, because you feel miserable. But there is something that is that's today one thing that I teach to the people. There is like an inner force in us, that when you begin to hear your inner force, is that strength comes out.
Did you hear that? Like, did you become aware of that force
Yeah,
during those 10 months?
let me tell you. After I heard the voice of my wife, wow, that was like for me a change. And after that, I began to receive small calls, 1, 2, maybe 3 minutes. But she was giving me hints, the things they were going. But the game changer for me was a situation that happened like in that between the 10 months and the first year. The situation was, now I'm aware because they were having a lot of meeting with the U.S. government. The U.S. government was taking care of us since day one, but we didn't know. By the way, we learned that the ambassador of the U.S. had gone 11 times to see us, and he never could. So that guy, he took the risk, that the ambassador of U.S. in Venezuela, he took the risk that when we were transferred to one of the sham trials, that they put us out only to sign a document that it was deferred. They were always deferring that because they didn't know nothing to do with it. So that guy went there and he took some photos, and those photos are the only photos that are from us in the internet. We were terrible. We looked like Nazis, people in the concentration camp in the Nazis, And
Wait, did they not? Were you being? I mean, obviously you were being fed, right? But not very much. Or
no, 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 no. Let me tell you that the food was totally terrible. Well, I don't know if you can call that food. At some point, I stayed like 2 or 3 days without eating. I lost 100 pounds. I lost
wow.
100 pounds. So literally, and one of the guys that was with me, he literally, I was so scared that he looked like a skeleton. You know how you see the photos in the concentration camp? He was like that. Well, that situation began to evolve from bad to worse because the situation began to evolve. And then the U.S. government, that was Trump at that moment, he was really putting a lot of pressure in the Venezuelan government, and the Venezuelan government was taking us like a tool to make a pressure. So every time there was something bad, they went to us, and they made it to new. They knew that. So they at the point the situation went so bad that they expelled the U.S. U.S. ambassador. The U.S. ambassador was expelled from Venezuela, and when he was expelled, we said, "Oh, well, we're left behind." And what the U.S. government decided is they begin to triangulate with the UN. So a commission of the UN flew to Venezuela.
So obviously this was a huge ordeal for you, but it sounds like you were able to make a little bit more sense of this when you realized that there were people who were supporting you, the government, when you realized that your family knew. That must have given you hope, right? Just to keep going, right?
That's part of the situation, how it was evolving, because as I was explaining, 1 year after, when the ambassador of the U.S. was expelled, they began to triangulate with the UN. This guy flew to Venezuela, began to make pressure. And at some point, one of my kids had to travel to Colombia to take care of my logistic. And the other guys did the same. All the family did things. Everybody did things to provide us food and medicine. So my son was in Bogota buying weekly food, sending to a guy in Venezuela that they cook and they have it prepared. It was a total process. And when the food came, they was manipulated because they review everything. But let me tell you, even that way doing that, I began to manage. I decided to take the risk. And I told the guy that was providing me the food, they bring me a pen and put me some kind of a paper like instead of napkins. So I began to write letters. So I wrote a letter to my wife, and the first day she received it, she was kind of scared when she saw the letter, but she took the risk, and she replied to me. My friend, we stayed doing that during 3 years. We did 3 years letters, and when I came back, she had compiled the letters. We have 1,000 letters. She had put it in Word. She transcribed it, and that is the base of my book. My book is based on my letters. So
Wow.
I wrote 1,000 letters between me and her, maybe 500 me, 500 her, because we did it like a daily routine. I begin every day to write letters when they provide me the food. So in the trash cans, and I make it in a double bottom. I put it there. They never found it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's God, but they never found it. And that we begin to refine the technique. At that moment, I was having a little bit more calls because the situation began to evolve according to how the negotiation with the U.S. was going. If the
And what did the people who had captured you? What did they want?
Oh, wow. Is that so funny? The first thing they were asking is they was imposed sanctions to Venezuela and to individuals, and they did oil embargo. So the first thing they asked is to lift the oil embargo. Then, of course, the U.S. didn't accept that. Then they were asking to be remove sanctions to the country and to them. They had frozen some funds in a bank. They were like 2 billion. They were requesting them to be unfrozen those 2. They began to request a lot of things for us. We were every time we heard what was going on with us, because by that moment I was writing letter with my wife, and I was really aware of what was going on because my wife and I we created like a secret code. So if in the case the letters could be found, only she and me knew what we were talking about. And I began to be aware of all the negotiation that was going on. And let me tell you that when I had a better communication, the US government was really pushing hard. By that time was the Trump administration, and literally the Secretary of State Department was every month making statements. They began to be a real pressure by that moment.
And you were obviously there during COVID as well. The whole COVID thing, you were there.
I took two times COVID.
Wow.
I had,
and tell me, no vaccination, no?
No. Let me tell you, we by that moment when the COVID came, because now we are 2018. Let me do the phases. So 2018 was going on. 2019. What happened in 2019? Our families, the 6 families, they were having meetings and with the U.S. government. They were going to Washington. They were received 2 times in the White House, even. So the instruction they were receiving it was to stay quiet because they were going to do a quiet diplomacy negotiation behind. That didn't work because these guys were requesting more and more and more. So our family decided to go to the press. In 2019, they launched a real aggressive campaign. There was a guy, those angels in earth, they appeared. That he was like a communication strategist that he really created a campaign. And our family began to appear in all the major media that you can imagine here in the US. So if you go to 2019, you will see tons and tons of interviews. They were interviewing in Times, in Newsweek, in ABC, all the major medias.
So eventually, was there just so much pressure that, what was it that they finally decided to release you?
Okay, well, let me tell you what happened at the end. At the end, going a little bit in 2019, when all that pressure was happening, here in the US began to be a big pressure, and I was not aware that our situation was not unique. That was happening like with 60 Americans. There were like us, like 55 more in another countries and all these families were totally isolated. One day, and let me tell you that I think that should be a movie one day, the creation of the Bring Our Family Home campaign, because all the families decided to get together. All the families of the 6, all the bunch of people that were in Iran, in Russia, in Myanmar, in Afghanistan, Syria, whatever you can imagine, decided to put together. And they created a campaign called the Bring Our Family Home campaign. And they created this campaign. Now we are in October 2022. So going back in 2019, the pressure was so hard that the Congress passed a law, an act. The act is today called the Robert Levinson Act to protect the Americans that are in this situation. And the name of Robert Levinson comes because this was a guy that was disappeared in Syria and his body never appeared. So in honor of him, they put that name. So that law began to protect us. So they classified as hostage wrongfully detained. So that gave us like a umbrella of protection, and they could do things that typically were not done. Because remember, here in the U.S., when the hostage crisis in Iran in 1979, one of the policy of the U.S. was you will never negotiate with your captors. That was like a kind of general policy. So that case was like a breaking point. So at the end, they created an office called the Special Presidential Office for Hostage Affairs, SPIHA. By the way, in the UK, I believe they're going to create something similar now. I have friends in UK that I know they are working on that to pass a law in UK also. And this special presidential office, this guy, his name is Ambassador Roger Carson, he began to fly to Venezuela and negotiate directly. He was authorized to have direct negotiation. So he visited us like 1 year before we were released. 1 year. 1 year, the first time we saw that guy, and he traveled like three more times every three months. In his second travel, he could release one guy. The guy that was with me, that was like a skeleton, he was in very bad condition. He was the first guy that he came back. So they released one. They released one. And in October 1st, 1 year ago, one day, they woke us 5 in the morning. They told us to get dressed. And it's funny because when they asked to get dressed, we used a yellow uniform that we call the minion uniform. It was like, the minions, So we were laughing that, hey, guys, minion uniform. And the guy told that we got released. So when they put us in our armored truck, and when I saw that we were heading to the Maiquetía airport, we were, hey, something is happening. Well, long story short, we were landing in a plane. They put us handcuffs, they tied, and they throw us in an island in the Caribbean called San Vicente, in the middle of nowhere. And in there was the swap. They swap up for two nephews of the president of Venezuela. Two nephews that were here in the USA, convicted by drug dealers. They were released, these two guys, and they swapped us. They swapped with this guy. When I came out from the plane, and the instruction we had was walk to the other plane, because we landed in like 5 minutes after the plane of the U.S. landed. So we were instructed to go to the U.S. plane. And when I was going, because I was the first, when I was going, I saw the two guys coming, and I realized they were the nephews of the president.
Yeah.
So we were.
So I mean, there's obviously so much more to this story in terms of what you must have gone through, the impact this had, the trauma, going home, and then being with your wife and your family. And I mean, there must be so much to that. And I would love people who are touched by this story to connect with you, to your book. Is your book out? Is it coming out?
Today is in the pre-order campaign. I'm with a company called Publicizer. They do pre-order to to cover the cost of the publishing, etc., etc. It's going to be alive, this campaign, for 60 days, and after that, the book is ready. The book is ready.
This is for me is what I'd love to discuss with you before we finish. Is what is it that you want to have happen as a result of this experience? What is your intention now? How has this changed you, and what are you doing? Because you're not retired now, right?
That's a very good question. And when I came back in October 1st, I did we stayed 10 days in a military base with a psychologist, with a decompression process. So I came back to my house October 11th, 10 days after. I did my first interview October 12th. And Anderson Cooper, that is a very well-known here, he interviewed me like 2 weeks after in CNN. And when I go back to that interview, I was thinking to do what today I'm doing. So what I decided, because I began to go to, I was putting a big trauma center here in the U.S., and begin to go to therapies and all these things for the PTSD. And I discovered that we really managed the situation because at that moment when I came back, we were all together. That the six of us already were together because the negotiations were going on. So they put us together. And when we went together, we began to manage. We went like in a survival mode. By the way, my company today is called the Coach as a Survivor because I'm a survivor. So we begin to go like in a survivor mode. So when I came back and I learned that our families were done this campaign, they had created a mural in Georgetown in Washington. There is a mural with 19 faces. My face is there. And we did a new mural here in Houston in July 4th. And they launched by that time in the UN a very aggressive campaign. So really the family begin to work hard. That was all the families. So I begin to meet all the families that the people that were in all over the world. You know, it's something that it changes your mind when you begin to see the faces of wives, kids, siblings, parents, fighting and learning their story. So that's why I decided to convert this in a coaching program. Because I said, okay, you went through this, you managed to survive this, you're giving a lot of hope to these people. I created a coaching program and I designed a program called Life Pill for a Survivor Guide that is based on my experience. That's why. So I decided to do that, and because I come from this corporate experience, I incorporate my experience and I helping people in companies. And I evolved and I begin to do speaking because I created a speak that's called From Captivity to Freedom that I have done some speech. I was invited to an event 2 or 3 weeks ago during the UN talking about this. So I begin to be vocal as an advocate for the hostage community. So today I can say that I'm one of the guys here in the US that really recognized in this area. And I begin to have connection with other countries. By the way, you have in the UK a very famous lady, there's Nazanin Zaghari Ratcliffe, that she was kept in Iran. And
Yeah, well,
and
I mean,
uh-huh.
no, go
No,
on.
no,
Sorry.
I was with her husband. He was in the meeting that I was in New York. He was online, but he was attending the same meeting. There's a lady that she's from Australia, Kylie Gibber Moore. There's a guy called Anush Ashori that is from UK. There's a lot of people that have been through this situation that have doing things great in their countries, trying to promote, that stopping this. And this meeting we had in New York was really nice, gathering with all these guys, because now we're trying to connect. Now we're trying to connect and do this, because this is something terrible. This is something not only that happened to me in Venezuela, it happened to people in Iran, but they replicate. It's copy paste. It's the same technique. It's a very, very refined technique of hostage diplomacy, because what they do, they take you. You are nobody. They don't care of you. You're a guy that maybe is a high profile target. So it's legally a ransom, because now they have you, they put you in a sham trial, and they begin to ask a ransom for you. Leave me this, unfortunately. Guys, they're in a campaign that was released 2 weeks ago from Iran, 5 guys, and they had to froze $6 billion in a bank account to get these guys released. $6 billion, a big deal.
Well, I think, it saddens me to say, but there's obviously going to be more of this type of situation going on. But the more there is people like you that is helping and supporting people through this process, the better, because people need help and they need real experience. As you were speaking, I was thinking about how this obviously changed you in terms of who you are now compared to who you were, and what you thought you were going to do with your retiring, and now what you're doing. And I just want you to know that I take some solace in that. I know Houston very well, because in 2011,
My wife was given 18 months to live with a very aggressive brain tumor.
yeah.
I found a treatment in Houston, not an MD Anderson, a Polish doctor who's been through so much trauma himself with the FDA and the Texas Medical Board. And my wife went on to live a very long life, and then she had a reoccurrence of that last year, and then she died recently. She died in May. And part of what I have been through has made me realize the importance of helping others who are also going through something similar. And I just want you to know that that's my biggest takeaway from this time that we spent together, how important it is to help people, to be real, to be honest. I have two more questions for you. The first question is, which you can answer it however you want. What's the best way for people to contact you? What is the best way for people to help you and support you in what you're doing? That's one question. And the other question is, what is your message to the world, right now? What is it that you want to say to everybody?
Okay, well, to contact me, I'm very active in LinkedIn, where I met you. I'm in all the space, but I'm very active in LinkedIn. I have a web page that is recently launched because I decided to convert this in something serious, to help people seriously. And I created my webpage. I don't know if I send you the links and the people can contact me or in LinkedIn.
We'll put the links on everything
or on the webpage. But what I want to do, basically, today I'm doing three things. One is I'm having this coaching program. So if anybody really feels in as a person or as a company that I can be a support to them, because I had today 35 years of experience in oil and gas, and my 5 years that I went through this situation, my friend, you really, really know how to handle situations. That is funny for me, because I was a guy always handling situations in my life, because I work a lot with joint ventures with international companies, dealing with all the stuff, and now that converting in this, so I put both things together. The other thing I'm doing public speaking. So everybody that wants to hire me for public speaking, I'm open. And my book that today is in the pre-sale campaign. I'm gonna give you the link because my book has something that, as I said, is based on my letters. It's like my memoir, but the way I wrote it is like you can be the evolution. You can read the evolution of the human being because my message to the world today is that any adversity in life you can survive. Any adversity.
Yeah.
Even you went through a terrible situation, my friend. I'm so sorry that you went through that, but you're here, and you not only survived it, you decided to convert it in something meaningful, because this is something that I learned. When you find a meaning in your life, and today I really feel passion for this. So I could have gone to my corporate world. I decided not. I decided to chase my life. Before I got retired, I was planning to become an oil and gas consultant, because that was my experience. So I said, okay, let's switch gears. And I decided to do what I'm doing today. So, so it's like you're exactly the same case.
Yeah, I like what you said there about
I switched gears.
Yeah, and sometimes, yeah. But I really want to thank you. I would encourage everyone who listens to this to follow Jose. If you take something positive away from this conversation, then reach out to him. Follow him. He's very active on LinkedIn. We'll put the links to his book and everything. But I want to just take a moment to thank you for being the person that you are. It gives me great strength, and I look forward. I have some very good friends. I was in Houston.
Oh, wow. Next time you come here.
I will. I most definitely will. But thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you for having me.
And
thank you for having me.
Soon.
Thank you.
The greater things that are stuck inside my head.